Welcome back to another episode of Stack Racks TV, Stack Rack Boxing, where we talk boxing, but, we do talk cash on this channel. It just is what it is, right? The main purpose, the main prerogative, the primary purpose of this channel, for y'all to just get on here, sit back, relax, Mac Jack, Slack Jack, and Jack. It's been a lot of speculation in the sport of boxing on Jermell Charlo coming back. I just wanted to share my thoughts and some of my opinions on him making a comeback to the 154-pound division, in 2026. So let's jump off in it. I think what makes sense for Jermell Charlo making a return to boxing, especially if this is something that he's serious about, I think he should fight on Pro Box, on the prelims, on free TV. But as far as him on a pay-per-view event, remember, last time we seen Jermell Charlo, he got caught with a shot, took a knee, and quit. And you can't erase that from fans' mind. A way that you could kind of redeem yourself, is working your way back up. Fight some contenders. Fight some of the guys that's moving up in the rankings. But as far as you just coming back off face card and name alone, that type of strategy doesn't work in 2026 because you got guys like Turkey Al-Sheikh and Eddie Hearn, who are looking to put on the best fights with the guys who are the best at the time. Jermell Charlo is not the best at the time, right? And Jermell Charlo, like I said before, he just got to work his way up. But, it's going to be hard, if he's not looking to work his way back up to erase, what took place in that Canelo Alvarez fight. You had a guy like Terrence Crawford went in there and made easy work of him at a lower weight class than you were. You were much more closer to Canelo Alvarez weight class. You were taller. You were longer. You had all the attributes, but you quit. And that's not something that fans want to pay for. Jermell Charlo took that payday from that Canelo fight and turned to a bad bitch. It just is what it is. He turned to a bad bitch, real sassy. Every drink he had an olive in it. And you just think that you could come back to the sport off face card alone and sell. It don't work like that with this new current landscape of boxing. You're going to have to get right back to the back of the line and work your way up. You know what I'm saying? And anybody promoting that, he should just come off this layoff, sell a high-ass pay-per-view and get an opportunity with a guy like Boots or Ortiz or Zayas, are part of the problem. It's guys at the 154-pound division, working their way up the ranks, on their knees every day praying for an opportunity. You got guys like Keith Thurman and Jermell Charlo who could pop in, pop out. And the people who really suffer from this is these guys who are taking their time to move up the ranks. These guys who aren't playing boxing, for them boxing is life. They dedicate themselves to the sport. They eating clean, they training every day. And it's just so sad that these guys can't get an opportunity because as soon as these guys want to pop in, pop out the sport, they go below the wayside. And these guys deserve an opportunity to be able to take care of their family. They deserve the opportunity to be able to fight for these belts, to make their dreams come true. But like I said before, that old style of promoting these old fighters, these guys who aren't dedicated to the sport, it really hurts these up-and-coming guys. And it's just sad that don't nobody get on here and speak for the guys that's working their way up in the rankings. Bottom line is, Jermell Charlo making a comeback to the sport, he need to work his way back up to the top. But he shouldn't hurt these other guys who are dedicated, and willing to fight to prove that they're the best, because he want to come back and get a paycheck. You know what I'm saying? Like I said before, Pro Box, some prelims, free TV, something. But as far as you coming back on a pay-per-view and overcharging fans, that don't work right now in the sport of boxing. If you want to come back to the sport, do it the right way. You quitting your last fight. See what I'm saying? Let these guys get an opportunity against some of these contenders. Fight against some of these contenders so they could try to make a name for themselves. But as far as you getting back in there, jumping in there with the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 guy, you don't deserve it. And your last performance showed that you don't deserve it.